Hi, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Shackelford, and welcome to today's masterclass. We're here with Lil Gourmets founder and CEO, Shibani Baluja, and pediatric advisor, Dr. Rupa Mahadevan. Today, Shibani will be talking to us about her journey to finding her why and what makes Lil Gourmets so unique. She's also going to share her insights, tips, and entrepreneurial techniques to position yourself for career success. And Dr. Rupa is here, and she's going to share her tips and tricks for one of the big things that we all have on our minds when raising little ones is making sure they are eating the right things. A few notes before we get started. The session is on LinkedIn, so it will be saved, and it'll also be available on our YouTube channel. We will also have time for an audience Q&A at the end of our session, so make sure to ask any questions in the comments, and we'll try to get to all of them at the end. All right, let's get started. Shibani, I'm going to hand it over to you to talk more about you and your career journey and everything about Lil Gourmets.
Great. Thanks so much, Elizabeth. I'm really excited to join the Mom Project on our talk about entrepreneurship and my journey, and hopefully can help provide some tips for others considering this. So just to give you a brief intro into Lil Gourmets, we are a fresh, veggie, heavy, globally inspired baby food that seeks to provide essential nutrients today while setting up kids to be healthy and adventurous eaters for life. So during our talk today, I plan to take you through just what was going on and why I decided to launch Lil Gourmets, a lot of the ups and downs of that journey and where we are today, and some of the learnings I've had along the way. So a little bit about me, University of Michigan alum, and I spent the bulk of my career at Kraft Foods, mainly in strategy or mergers and acquisitions before leaving to start Lil Gourmets. So I really never intended on becoming an entrepreneur, but my life experiences led me here, and the idea nagged at me until I finally decided I had to do something about it. So it started with just my struggle to get pregnant. I went through an extended infertility journey, and during that time was seeing an acupuncturist and other specialists, and they really encouraged me to take a look at what I was putting into my body. And I thought I was healthy, but the truth was I ate a lot of processed foods. And so at their advice, I cut out all processed foods from my diet and really felt the benefits of clean eating. I eventually had my son Jaden here on the right. And when the time came to introduce Jaden to solids, I assumed that I would use the baby foods on the market. I was a busy working mom. I commuted, I traveled, and I just didn't think I had time to make baby food. But the first time I had Jaden in his high chair and I had a jar of organic carrots, I opened up those carrots, and the irony kind of hit me that I had cut out processed foods from my diet in order to have him. And here I was about to feed him the same processed foods. And so it didn't really work for me. So it started my next struggle, which was finding food that I felt good about feeding him. And I really was never able to. And so I started cooking all of Jaden's meals. Every Sunday, I would make just a variety of foods and use a lot of different vegetables. I'd use meats, and I would always use a lot of spices. I just didn't think to not. And as Jaden became a toddler, I saw just the impact that this early introduction of delicious vegetables had on his diet. He loved flavorful foods. He loved vegetables, and he really shunned processed food. The whole experience just got me curious. And like I said, I was at Kraft Foods, and so I had a lot of data at my fingertips. So I decided to just take a look at what was happening with baby food. And so I compared it to pet food. Although this is pet products, I couldn't find pet food at that time. But what I found was baby food had been steadily declining, and contrasted it with pet food, where there were fresher and more natural options. And pet food had really been growing strongly. But what was growing was the fresh segment of it. And when I looked at baby food, I saw that essentially baby food was largely what had been launched in the 1920s. So there had been really little innovation, other than increasing accessibility to organic and package innovation with pouches. Outside of that, it was largely the same. And so it really had been declining, and consumers had been leaving. And I wondered, were there other parents who were dissatisfied like me? And so I started to do consumer research and talk to a lot of moms. And what I found was the answer was a resounding yes. Parents were leaving baby food. 50 to 60% is what I consistently found had either completely left or largely left, and were using it more in a pinch. And most parents said it wasn't because they enjoyed cooking. In fact, most were up at midnight, kind of cooking this food for their kids, and just seeking better options. And sadly, what I was finding was baby food for a lot of parents had become this stage that they just wanted to get out of. When for me, in introducing Jaden to all these delicious foods, I just saw how much joy he experienced as he tasted new flavors. And it was sad to know that baby food was just such a kind of a difficult and maybe struggle for so many, when it should have been just a joyful time. Most parents were saying there was just too much sugar, too much fruit. The offerings were too over processed, and everyone was looking for vegetables, or many were looking for vegetables. So then I took a harder look at the players in the market, and I found that about 90% of what was in the aisle was fruit first, meaning fruit was the first and primary ingredients. And so what this meant was we were giving our kids a lot of apples, bananas, pears, maybe a little bit of mixed in vegetables. But the sugar levels, even though it was natural sugar, the sugar levels were really high. And for kids who were eating a couple of these in a day, it was just entirely too much. And then I was starting to learn more about the research that was emerging that was showing there's a really high correlation between our early foods and our future eating habits. And so what I had experienced with Jaden wasn't an anomaly. It was that we could shape our kids' feeding habits if we started to introduce them early to vegetables, to flavorful foods. And Dr. Rupa will talk about this. Flavor training is the term that she's introduced me to. And that was really something that was key that we wanted to do in that infancy stage. So when I looked at the market overall, I found a declining market, very little innovation, very little differentiation between the brands that were out there, consumers leaving, and the products not being in line with the latest in infant nutrition research. And so my background being to identify categories and areas of interest, everything I saw, everything I heard, and everything I read said that baby food was really ripe for disruption. And I had an idea that could be that disruptor. So after the idea nagged at me for a little bit longer, I eventually decided I had to just see if I could make something of this. So, but here's actually where my experience ended. I had spent, a decade in strategy. Wasn't in operations, and I really didn't know what to do next now that I was out of that kind of, not out of, but had really identified that issue. So luckily, I engaged with a couple of ex-craft R&D contractors. And so one of the first steps they wanted to do was figure out, who's delivering taste and nutrition. And if we can identify who's doing it well, then we'll hone in on the technology that they're using. At this stage, I was really interested in delivering vegetables and flavor. I hadn't quite gotten to where we've landed, which is refrigerated. I didn't know that a fresh baby segment existed, and I didn't know about the technology that would allow us to get there. But what I saw with my R&D contractors, we basically gathered about 60 different products between baby foods and just veggie heavy products. And we tasted them all. And unfortunately, what came of that day was unfortunately, I guess, depending on how I look at it, was that there was no shelf stable technology that was going to allow me to deliver my vision. And I could maybe improve on what was in the market, but not enough to really deliver what my vision was. And so I ended up thinking that, okay, that's probably it. I don't think I can do this. But fortunately, we then stumbled upon a technology. It's a cold pressure technology that many of you might be familiar with, but it's used with cold pressed juices and other baby brands now that would allow us to go refrigerated. And so what this meant was it was a big decision. It meant I had to change everything I had done to that point, from formulas to packaging, and everything was still in development stage. But it also meant that we were actually going to be creating a category. And I'd say in my days at Kraft Foods, we always said, never launch a product that no one knows exists. And if they do, they don't know where to find it. And I found that I was actually doing both of those things now if I decided to go down this route. This is when I learned that others were creating fresh baby food, but they were really struggling. And some of the struggles were, there was no knowledge by either parents or retailers that this existed. It was, like I showed in that first chart, it was under $1 million at that point. And there was no logical place to put it because there weren't coolers in the baby aisle. So it was like, would it go in dairy by baby yogurt? Would it go in produce? Would it go in with grab and go? And what this meant was you couldn't direct parents to where to find you in a store if you were to launch, but you also couldn't figure out sometimes who the right person was at the different retailers to talk to. So like when I was trying to talk to Whole Foods, was I supposed to talk to the baby buyer? Was I supposed to talk to the produce buyer? Was I supposed to talk to the dairy buyer? And not only did I not know, sometimes they didn't know because it wasn't really a category that they were in. And the other thing was, it was going to be a lot more expensive because we were going to be shipping refrigerated food around. Just that the supply chain was so much more expensive, and the production was going to be so much less efficient because of this limited shelf life. So we knew we would be landing at a selling price that was about 2 times what was in the aisle. But as I looked at the science and I learned more about it, for me, it became, if I was going to do this, this was just how I was going to have to do it. Otherwise, I wasn't going to do it. So what the science was showing me was, like I said, we were trying to flavor train kids, and this cold pressure technique, also called HPP, really was mimicking the same flavors as taste. So put another way, you weren't getting any sort of degradation on taste with HPP, but you could see that you were getting it with heat pasteurized, and we could taste it. There also was an impact on nutrients. So this is a really complicated topic. So I'm just going to summarize it in a minute here, but there's a lot of research around this to just show there's limited degradation of nutrients when you use HPP versus the control or fresh. So here's the fresh folic acid. Here's your HPP. Here's a quick flash pasteurization is what we do if we were to freeze a product. So also very minimal. But then if you looked at trying to make it shelf stable or conventional pasteurization, there's a big impact here. Same thing we were seeing with other anthocyanins are kind of anti-inflammatory in nature, but you can see the degradation. So here's fresh, minimal degradation with HPP, and then just bigger a bigger degradation there with heat pasteurization. So I'll kind of summarize all that went into getting to launch, just in the interest of time. But really, there was just a constant refinement of business plans, of project plans, having to know that we were really inconsequential to most of the people that were dependent on our launch. So we couldn't really dictate project plans. Nothing went according to plan. Everyone would tell me, everyone giving me advice that it's going to take double the time and cost double the amount of money to launch. And they were right. It might have been even more than that. And I will say the whole process for me was overwhelming because I didn't really know what I was doing. And so I had to just take things step by step, day by day, and really find people who could help me and guide me and try to minimize the number of mistakes, or who knew the right people to help. But eventually we got to the point of launching. So we had done, all of our food safety tests, developed the product, developed the formulas, the packaging, and the branding. And I just summarized about 2 years of maybe a year and a half of time, but we're getting to launch, and I'm very excited at the plant and tasting the product and checking the seals, and everything looks great. And we've got this 2-step process. So the first step is the production and the sealing of the product, and then it's this cold pasteurization. So day 1, I'm at the plant doing the step 1, and everything looks great. And then day 2, I show up to the where we're doing the cold pasteurization, and my product is just everywhere. And it's just looks like an explosion in there. There's one of my SKUs is beets, and there was just beets everywhere. And what we found was our seals were just sliding right off the product when they went into that second stage. They weren't properly sealed. And so that first production run was essentially 100% waste. And then I laugh now, but I was crying that day. We spent the next 5-6 weeks trying to figure out what went wrong. How do we fix this? Did a lot more testing. The testing was working great. So it was about, I think, 6-7 weeks later, got back into the plant, repeated the process. We had a little bit of improvement, but still 75% waste. So nothing that could work. And so at that point, my co-packer stopped returning my calls, stopped returning my emails, and just went silent on me. And this is, again, we're inconsequential to them at this point. So I had to figure out what I was going to do. And so I luckily had talked to other co-packers as I was trying to get to launch. And there was one that I really wanted to work with, but for a variety of reasons, it didn't work at that time. But now that it was 18 months or so later, I called them up and I said, hey, do you think you can take me now? And they were like, actually, we think we can. So that really worked out. But I still had to get my equipment and everything from the co-packer who wouldn't call me back. So I rented a truck from Home Depot and drove up there. And my husband came for support, thankfully. And I had to talk him out of, the money I owed him and get my equipment. And so we were able to do it. And it felt like both a low point, but then also there was hope with the new co-packer. And it felt like I was kind of coming home to who I probably should have been with in the first place. So as I met with the new co-packer, they basically showed me that, what we had come up with sealing this cup was just not going to work for this process. And so, lost capital and equipment that kind of was obsolete because it's not what we could use. I learned a lot about cups and seals, and I'd actually developed a custom cup to launch my product because the cups that I was shown, I didn't feel like they had as much character as I wanted to. But what ended up happening was I ended up having to use that first cup that I was shown. But thankfully it actually fit into this sleeve I had developed. When the time came to decide how to brand the product, I could have either branded my cups or branded or use these sleeves. And because we were launching and I was unsure if these were the right product names, if this was the right look, if this was even the right products themselves, I went with this sleeve, and it actually was probably a saving grace in that it fortunately fit around this new cup. But one thing it really taught me was I added about a year of time to my timeline to launch, my launch timeline, trying to get perfection with this cup. And I probably should have just launched with the faster thing, because what I've learned is there's no such thing as perfection at launch. And we launched, but yikes. The first time I saw this package on shelf, I was like, we're in a baby yogurt, or sorry, a yogurt shelf, and we've got this disruptive product. It's not dairy, it's a baby food, but it's refrigerated. There's nothing else like it on shelf, but we look exactly like a yogurt. And so, everything I did trying to create this disruptive product, I just kind of didn't think about the fact that on shelf it just wasn't going to stick out. And I don't blame my designer. This was actually me dictating too much. And so another lesson learned is learning what you're good at and kind of letting others have the creative freedom, or the freedom to be good at what they're good at. And there's a reason you engage people. And so that was a good lesson there. So that's kind of the launch story. And so a little bit about where we are today. So I'm really happy to say that the product today is so in line. It's actually exactly what I wanted to launch. It's taken a few years, definitely a lot of tweaks along the way, but we have really 3 key tenets to the products. The first is our Veggie First Promise, where we deliver at least a serving of veggies or beans per cup, which is 100% of a baby's daily needs and 50% of a toddler's. They're all chef crafted, based on authentic global recipes. So really bringing flavors from around the world to our kids here in the US, and really try to help develop that flavor profile. It's definitely not like your ordinary baby food. Like our sweet potato curry, it's sweet potatoes, spinach, coconut milk. There's a blend of cinnamon, cumin, coriander, turmeric in it, and a splash of lemon and lime. So it's really just delicious food. Not even just calling it baby food, just delicious food. And all of the products are minimally processed and refrigerated. So we really deliver the taste, texture, and nutrition of a homemade meal. And I love seeing it, because I think the comment we get most from parents is just how great they feel when their kids eat the product. And I feel it too. My daughter still eats them to this day. So just what we're trying to accomplish, really is to develop this love of veggies, but also get kids curious about the world, try to make the world a little bit of a smaller place. We know so much of culture is surrounded around food. So, we hope to make a kid curious about Morocco because they grew up loving their Moroccan squash, or shawarma, and getting interested in the Middle East and culture there because they understand the food, and just loving the food too, to be open to it as they grow older. So today we're in about 200 stores. We're relatively small. We're in one region of Whole Foods, which is basically Texas and Louisiana. We're in about 100 Meijers, and then we're more recently launching into some West Coast retailers. But we're really excited because I think we have such a differentiated product, and most of you've probably heard of Once Upon a Farm. So I love that we're so complementary to them, because they really have become the fresh baby food leader, and we sit nicely alongside them and bring more consumers in with this differentiated product. So we're not looking to, just take parents away from shelf stable. We're really trying to fill a need for the parents who've exited, who are buying produce, who are looking for, maybe not a solve every meal of every day, but once a day they need a break. And that's really what we hope to provide. And lots of learnings on the marketing side. Our branding has evolved a number of times from this original to a couple looks that I think were, our first look was, I thought, beautiful, but didn't really tell parents what we are and didn't make it clear we were for babies. And so just through the years, trying to become more obvious what we are, because we don't necessarily have a category. And now with this latest that's just coming out next month, is to really start appealing to kids too. So they also are excited to eat their vegetables and get a little bit, bring in more toddlers and older kids who might not be as open to eating a product that says meal for baby. And then the competitive landscape has really evolved since we launched. This whole direct to consumer, a lot of these companies, they weren't around when we launched. So that's really been interesting, because I think there's a lot of education happening with this group, the same education that we want parents to have. There's also been a lot of exits as it's taken longer for this category to take off. And there's just been a lot of learnings there. And so some of my learnings on entrepreneurship, I think we're still around today, because while we've made a lot of mistakes, they've mostly been smaller mistakes. And so we just try to always learn. I think we're never going to know the answers, and we really just have to test. And so really the mantra here is test, learn, adapt, repeat. I've learned it's so important to have partners who really are aligned on the mission and who have success with small brands, with small budgets. I've spent a lot of dollars and time with agencies that were far too big for us. It doesn't work for either side. There's so much we're not going to know. Sometimes it's just go with your gut. And sometimes I find that I just have to get away from my computer, go for a walk, and things become a little bit more obvious. The differentiation. So, if we were launching something that was for everybody, then I know it probably would have already been done. But this means, I think we have to know that we're not going to be for everyone. We are a niche right now, and we hope over the years people get more and more open to this type of feeding for their kids. The journey is really hard, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs, we struggle with imposter syndrome, because we don't know what we don't know, and we don't know that we have the skills to do what we're doing. But I think being in networks with other entrepreneurs has really helped me so much to see we all have this kind of self-doubt, and are we going to be able to do this? And again, taking it day by day has just been really helpful in my entrepreneurship journey. And then I just think when I look back to my M&A career, where I had just weeks and months of working super hard, and then I had this time to recharge, entrepreneurship, I think especially as a parent, you really want to recharge, but there's almost just too much on your plate. And so to me, having the purpose and the passion is so essential. I really could not have lasted this long if I hadn't had that, or if I didn't have that. And then never knowing how the story is going to end. I hope I don't know if what I've told you is right or not, because I don't know how this is going to end. But I know I'm just going to give it my all and see what happens here. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Rupa, Dr. Rupa Mahadevan, to talk you through the next section here.
Hey, thanks, Shibani. That was great and inspiring. I really was excited to join the team of Lil Gourmets. A little bit about me: I've been a practicing pediatrician since 2016. After my pediatric residency, I did a 2-year fellowship in Chicago, focused a little bit more on holistic pediatrics, so getting more into the nitty-gritty of the mix of Eastern medicine and the different evidence-based modalities that we can use for kids. And that was focused on nutrition, anywhere from traditional Chinese medicine to Ayurveda to mind body medicine, and really trying to incorporate that into my practice. I've been teaching culinary medicine to medical students and other physicians for 5 years now, which I'm very passionate about because truly believe food is medicine. The better we eat, the better it is for our health. Little Gourmets joined the Partnership for Healthier America team a couple years ago, and I was happy to come on board with that as well. And we've been able to launch different handouts for clinics and pediatricians and healthcare providers focused on healthy eating and how to properly introduce solids to raise adventurous eaters. And in between clinic, I enjoy contributing to books, magazines, website seminars on healthy eating for kids. So, a couple of reasons why I got involved with Little Gourmets. When I met Shibani, she told me about the product, and I was really excited about it just because one, it's refrigerated, so we know that the ingredients are extremely fresh, and I really liked that it was vegetables first. A lot of what we know with children is that repeated exposure, especially to vegetables, is what improves the palate over time. We know that the more they try vegetables first, the more likely they are later on in their life to continue to eat vegetables. So it was one of the few products on the market that provided the serving of vegetables for infants that they needed. And I was really passionate about that. So I thought that was a good fit. I also think that importance of diversity in vegetables. It's not just introducing, the same vegetable every day. It's the variety because different vegetables have different nutrients in it. The orange vegetables, for example, have carotene in it, which is great for inflammation. Purple vegetables have more resveratrol. Green vegetables and cauliflower, broccoli have things like indole 3 carbinol, which is really important for brain development. So we know that diversity in vegetables is really key. And I liked that the Little Gourmet products, the different lines are heavy. Some are heavy in cauliflower and squash, some are heavy in beets. And I really liked the diversity it was providing, and especially flavor. So we know that when we flavor train kids, that they're more likely to be ready accepting to new flavors later on in their life. And I loved the idea of exposing them to different spices and herbs from anywhere from Morocco to India to Spanish, things like turmeric and curry and cinnamon, salt and pepper we can always use to train babies' palates, but also increasing the flavor is important too. Not only the flavor in vegetables, but the flavor in herbs and spices as well. And we know that certain herbs and spices help the immune system, especially things like turmeric and cinnamon. We know we've had a rough, COVID RSV season over the last few years. So, really, that diversity in flavor and the nutrients that it provides can really improve our little baby's guts. And, when we think about short term and long term benefits, short term is definitely, boosting up the immune system. And long term, we know that the repeated exposure to vegetables, flavor training kids and babies so that they're more likely to eat healthy down the road really prevents things like diabetes and obesity long term. So, with that in mind, I felt that the Little Gourmets products was really the perfect fit for what I was already passionate about. And so it was a good marriage between us. So, as a pediatrician, I get a lot of different questions about introducing food to babies and little ones. And what's especially important is I always tell parents it's most important to ask those questions at the 4 month visit because you're likely to introduce babies to food right before the 6 month visit or at the 6 month visit. So, having some idea of what you want to do or how to go about the process at your 4 month pediatric visit is a great place to start. So, one of the first questions I get is when should I start solid food? So, we really are looking at development at this point. So, right around 5 to 6 months, babies start sitting up And we know that this is especially important to prevent things like choking. We know when they get that good head control and then when they get the good neck control, that they're better able to start solid foods. And again, this is right around the 5 to 6 month mark. Babies also show a lot of hunger cues around this time. So they're going to be, when you're eating, they're going to be smacking their lips a lot more. They're going to be staring at you while you eat. You're almost going to feel guilty. So want them to be excited about starting solids. But really what you're looking for is their hunger cues and their development with sitting up. So what food should I start with? So this is always the biggest question. And what I continue to harp on with all my patients is starting with vegetables, vegetables, vegetables. So one thing to help your baby be a good eater is vegetables first. And we know that you can introduce 1 to 2 vegetables a day for the first couple weeks, but starting foods like avocados, sweet potatoes, cauliflower, squash, that's the most important. And then we say try to do fruit as either snacks or dessert. All babies tend to love fruit. It's sweet. It has more natural sugars in it, so they tend to be more readily eatable. But we know that with vegetables, the earlier we start with and the more that we start with, the more likely they are to not only readily accept it, but for them to enjoy it as well. And we know that the palate is especially ready to eat different types of food. And so the more we expose it to, the more that palate develops a flavor for things. So even incorporating herbs and spices at the beginning for babies, right when you're introducing solids, is a great way to train their palate as well for the long term. So what's better, purees or baby-led weaning? Do I have to pick one? So I get this question a lot. If you haven't heard of baby-led weaning, it's has been more popular in the last 10 years. And from the American Academy of Pediatrics, we have not seen more of a choking risk with baby-led weaning. It's this idea of offering bigger chunks of food to babies. So instead of offering them applesauce, you would offer them small pieces of a cut apple. Instead of offering them broccoli puree, you're offering them pieces of broccoli. So it really maintains the texture and look of the fruit or vegetable. So I always tell patients and parents to try to do both if they're comfortable. Having babies exposed to both early on is a great way. One thing I like about purees is it's easier for kids to take a liking to it, just because it's easier to digest in the very beginning. Purees are great for being able to mix different things together, mix a vegetable or two, as well as mix spices into it. But incorporating baby-led weaning is also good because it gives you the chance for more self-exploration. We know that when babies are able to touch their food, hold their food, mess with their food a little bit more, the more likely they are to enjoy what they're eating. We also know that for purees, it's a perfect time to introduce the spoon to babies, because when you introduce the spoon, it also increases their hand-eye coordination, which improves development. So, purees with the spoon and then baby-led weaning for self-exploration are really the best ways to start solids. You really don't have to pick one. A lot of parents sometimes shy away from baby-led weaning because of the choking risk, but really research supports that the hazard is not increased with offering bigger pieces. You just have to make sure they're big enough that they can't choke on it. So if you're offering slices of something, making sure they're a couple inches long, at least 1 inch thick, and they're not the size of a baby's airway, because that's when things tend to get stuck. So how can I avoid a picky eater? So one of the things that we know is, again, the flavor training. So the more vegetables and fruits that you offer early on from 6 to 8 months, the less likely you're going to have a picky eater. And again, just because a baby makes a face sometimes they'll make, a squeamish face or a face that looks like they're not enjoying it. It's not that they don't like it. It's really that that's their way of self-exploration. Is making those faces, trying it. If something has a little bit of lemon or lime in it, they can look, like they're looking, you know, unhappy is what I like to say. But it really has nothing to do with how they're feeling about the food. It's just how they choose to explore the world around them. And so I tell parents all the time, the best thing that you can do is avoid um, offering the same thing every day, trying to offer a multitude of diversity. So offering, different vegetables every day, offering different fruits every day, and then offering things that are mixed together, like the Little Gourmet products. So, they're a mix of fruits and mostly vegetables, but occasional fruit. And then, of course, the spices and herbs is really important. So babies that are more exposed to spices and herbs early on have a better global palate as well, because um, more like Indian, Spanish, Asian food tends to have more flavor in it. But if you introduce it early on, then the likelihood of them liking it down the road is high too. So it can take up to 7 to 21 tries for a baby to like something and acquire a taste for something. So when it comes to spinach and broccoli, I get from parents a lot of times they don't like it. The truth is, babies don't know what they like. They just need to be offered things over and over and over again. And then the acquisition for that taste and the way their palate is trained changes over time. So, really making sure that variety is key, and, the rhythm of offering the same thing every day is to be avoided. Really offering that global palate, something different every day is ideal. So if you already have a picky eater, some of the research and some of the things that we do in our clinic that we know works is one, offering dipping sauces. So we know if offer babies vegetables and they don't readily take it, we know that if you offer dips like hummus, peanut butter, guacamole, that they're more likely to try it and taste it again and again and again. So I always tell parents, if you have a little one that doesn't like something, try offering a dip with it. Or you can even add. So sometimes what Shibani does, which I love, is to pasta, she'll add a Little Gourmet's veggie meal, and that'll be the sauce for it. Or instead of hummus, offer one of the Little Gourmet's like beets dips or the Moroccan squash, because it can be a dip, not only just a baby food. So dips are key. The other thing is modeling good behavior. We know that kids are more likely to eat something healthy if they watch a parent or caregiver eat that specific food. So sometimes I ask parents, of picky eaters, do you like vegetables? And when they say no, it's a great opportunity to get them to try something new as well, because kids are more likely to eat something that they watch their parents eat. And getting kids in the kitchen, so we know kids are more likely to eat something if they've cooked it or prepared it in some way. And so, it's a great opportunity to bond with your kid. It's a great family activity of cooking. So I always say, if your kid is helping you prepare the meal or even just stirring, helping you, add ingredients together, then they're more likely to try something new. And then actually, some great research has supported that if the vegetables are in different shapes and colors, kids and picky eaters are more likely to eat it. So cutting foods in circle shapes, star shapes, rectangles, triangles. What's interesting is kids are more likely to pick it up and try it, especially when everything is in different colors. So they like the idea of colors and shapes, not only, in school, but in food as well. So those are some tips and tricks you can try at home. So it's okay to hand my baby a pouch to self feed. So we always say, if you're on the go and that's the best thing for your baby and it just makes sense and it's convenient, then that's fine. But I always say, don't develop too much of a habit with the pouches, because we know to really develop the oral palate and the muscles of mastication, babies should be spoon feeding. They should be eating foods that they can chew. They should be eating purees with a spoon, because it helps not only develop their muscles in their jaw, but it also helps develop muscles for language as well. We know that the more babies spoon feed, the more language can also develop over time. So pouches are good, again, when they're convenient, when they're on the go, when they're sporadic and every now and then, but I don't recommend it as, every day, as for every meal. So which foods boost the immune system? So we know, like I mentioned before, that um, different vegetables have different phytonutrients in it, and that goes the same with fruit as well. We know that 70% of the immune system is in the gut. So introducing foods that help with immunity really is the diversity in the vegetables, not only the nightshades, things like eggplant and beets, but also the cruciferous vegetables are great. So the cauliflower, the Brussels sprouts, the broccoli, the kale. We also know that spinach is uh, really helps with inflammation in the body. We know that the higher the levels of sugar in the body, the more the levels of inflammation. And I always say the best way to combat inflammation is through vegetables. So when we think about the immune system, you really want to think about inflammation, and you really want to think about how vegetables can combat that. So, eating from the rainbow, so trying to do 2 to 4 different vegetables a day that are different colors is truly ideal. Purple cabbage, you know, green celery, orange red peppers. Really, that rainbow that Mother Earth has given us is for a reason, and it's to really improve the immune function. And then prebiotic and probiotic foods when kids get a little bit older. So things like yogurt is a great probiotic. Uh, Prebiotics tend to be more fiber filled foods. So those foods tend to also help with constipation. So when parents talk to me and bring in kids with tummy aches and constipation, we know that they're likely not getting enough fiber or they're not getting enough water. So when you introduce solid foods, you actually at 6 months want to introduce water as well, because it really helps with the digestive system. So with constipation, fiber rich foods tend to be things like whole grains, oatmeal, fibrous vegetables, like celery is extremely fibrous. So we like to offer that to babies with constipation. Prebiotics can be anything from psyllium husk, which you can add into things that you're already cooking, or probiotics like sauerkraut, kimchi, and yogurts. It's some of those require a little bit of an acquired taste over time. But one of the smoothies that we talk to our patients about in clinic that we happily call the poop smoothie is really doing a cup of spinach, a pear, an apple, flax seeds, and chia seeds, and mixing that all in the blender and offering that to your kid, because that really gets the digestive system going with the different fibrous consistencies. And then when it comes to brain development, we really want to think about your omega 3s, so your fatty rich foods. So I say avocados are great for this because they're rich in your omega 3s. We know that coconut oil, we know that nut butters are also not only have fiber in it, but um, are enriched with nutrients that can really help the brain. And we know that things like DHA found in fish oil, seafood is also great for brain development. And you really want to introduce the highly rich allergen foods between 6 to 8 months, things like shellfish, shrimp, fish, nut butters, eggs, just because it not only lowers the risk of allergies, but it also improves development with the brain as well, with everything rich in the omega 3 category. And finally, let's talk about sugar. So how much sugar can I give to my baby and toddler? So we really don't recommend any added sugar. So the USDA has put out guidelines that no added sugar before the age of 2. We say that fruit sugars are okay because they come natural in fruit, or if you're doing 100% fruit juice after the age of 2, you can do up to 4 ounces a day. But we really say, really minimal sugar in a baby's diet, really no sugar, and find products with no added sugar, which is one of the other reasons I really like the Lil Gourmet products, because there's no added sugar in them. It's just the natural sugars from the fruit. So, patients were asking me about Halloween, which was a couple weeks ago, how much candy can my baby and toddler eat? And I really say, of course, it's Halloween. You can always make an exception, but make sure, like, things like cookies and pastries and candy aren't a regular staple in any kid's diet. Really, one, for the inflammation. Two, it's just not good for the immune system, and it's cavity provoking. So really minimal sugar before the age of 2, and really looking to find products that say no added sugar is ideal. And then fruit sugars are perfectly fine, just because, again, they're found in Mother Nature. I always say, if a food doesn't have a label, then you can readily give it to your kid, because really it's coming from the most natural sources possible. So along with Shibani, I think we just want to say a big thank you.
Thank you all so much. And also, I see the discount code, so I wanted to make sure that everyone got that, and we'll be able to share that afterwards too, so that everyone knows that they can go and get Lil Gourmets themselves. That was so interesting. And I mean, personally, I think because I have a 5-month-old, this was all very relevant. I wrote down so many notes. So really, thank you. I think what we covered from your entrepreneurial journey, and that tremendous experience that you had with the Home Depot truck, and like the labels and the way, like, I'm just imagining like you walking into that shipping plant and seeing like,
Oh my God,
the 95% waste. I mean, it goes to show how incredible this journey is, how passionate you are about it, and everything has its ebbs and flows.
Absolutely. There's a lot you can't plan for. And so we just know things are going to go wrong. Yeah.
And you can laugh about it now, but I'm sure in the moment.
There were a lot of tears.
And Dr. Rupa, truly, that was I feel like you answered all the questions that could have been in a Q&A. So it was really, really informative. I think the one thing that we want to talk about last is we're focusing at the Mom Project about gratitude this month. And can you all just share a bit about what you are grateful for?
Yeah.
Shibani,
do you want to go?
Yeah.
Okay, start with me. Okay. I think I'm very grateful, I'd say, for my family, first and foremost. I mean, this one, for my husband, I wouldn't have been able to do this for as long as I've been doing it without, his support and kind of encouragement. And I'd say same thing for my siblings and my parents. So I'm very grateful for my kids. I mean, they're the ones who, I think, through that whole infertility journey and just what I learned, they're the ones who kind of led me here. And then I'm thankful for, I'd say, the support I've gotten along this journey from people like Dr. Rupa, from other entrepreneurs, from communities that are really, especially, I'd say, really through COVID, came together to help startups and really kind of give us the encouragement that we needed to keep going, and some of the learnings and the knowledge. So I think it's been just such a interesting time. Sometimes I wonder, like, why did I leave my corporate job and some of the comforts that, truthfully, now that I'm on this side, kind of came with that. I probably miss an IT person more than anything, but it's been such a learning, and I think if in the end I've made an impact on kids' nutrition, I will be forever grateful for that.
Oh, I love that. Dr. Rupa, what about you?
So many things to be grateful for. I think, especially with Thanksgiving around the corner, I think um, a little over a month ago, I had my first baby and very, very grateful for that. And I think I have so much respect for moms. Being a pediatrician, you know a lot, but until you experience it firsthand, it really takes a village to raise a child. And I've been so grateful to have so much support with family and my husband. And I think just like Shibani says, like, when you have a kid, it really invigorates your passion for, bringing a child into the world, offering them, the healthiest, most nutritious things possible. I find myself late at night Googling things about breast milk and, what's healthy and what's not healthy and things I should eat and should not eat. And that's for myself. And I think that when it comes to babies and their gut is so new and raw, that when you introduce solid foods, you want to do it right. And I think this has also invigorated my passion to educate, more caregivers about food in general, just because I'm learning so much now as I go.
Well, you both have educated us so much today. So thank you again for joining us. And Shibani, let us know how can we find Lil Gourmets? I know, will you just repeat the website one more time?
Yeah, it's littlegourmets.com. And you can also find us on Amazon or in check our store locator if you're near one of our stores. But and yeah, we'll send out the code. It was just moms20 to get 20% off. And yeah, thank you, Elizabeth. I love the support from the Mom Project, and I love what you guys are doing for moms. And so just really grateful to have met and to be able to do this.
Well, thank you again for joining us today. Thank you for everyone who tuned in, and we will see you next time. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.